like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, September 1st, 2021 to order. Clerk, could we please have a roll call?
We have 11 present and 1 absent.
11 present, 1 absent. Please note that Commissioner Anderson is excused tonight as he is still healing from his surgery, and our prayers are with him, and we wish him well. Could we do the approval of the minutes? Commissioner Shaw.
Prayer and pledge.
Oh, gosh, I'm just jumping all over. Prayer and the pledge, Commissioner Sorge.
We need a lot of prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, fellow commissioners. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silverbow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens.
Amen.
Our Father.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Sorge, did you do that just to make me feel good? We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Commissioner Shaw.
Whoever says this isn't really fun, Council of Commissioners, it is fun. Okay, at this time, I move to approve the minutes of August 18th, 2021, regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to the Chief Executive's report. Oh, no, we'll go to items not addressed on the agenda tonight. We have one item. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The finding of an existing emergency to permit suspension of the rules to allow communication number 2021-445 to be added to tonight's agenda. In accordance with the provision of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silverbow, State of Montana, the Council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires that the Council rules be suspended to allow communication 2021-445 to be added to the agenda of this regular meeting of the Council. The reason for the suspension is as follows. Communication number 2021-445 is a communication from Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher requesting the Council's concurrence in the appointment of Dylan Pippenich as the Planning Director for the City, County of Butte-Silverbow, Montana. This communication was not submitted by the deadline of the September 1st agenda, as Mr. Pippenich's selection was not made until after such deadline. Accordingly, in order to obtain the Council's concurrence of Mr. Pippenich's appointment and to fill this vacant director position, the Chief Executive is requesting that this matter be added to tonight's agenda. So at this time, I move to approve suspension of the rules to consider placing communication number 2021-445 on the agenda at the September 1st, 2021 regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place this on tonight's agenda. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote. 11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to any items, our Chief Executive's report. I don't think we have any other items not addressed on the agenda tonight, so we'll go to the Chief Executive's report. I'm just stumbling through this today. You think I missed a meeting or something last week. As we all know, the COVID and Delta variant is prevalent in our world today, and we're seeing a lot more cases locally. Tomorrow, we will be having a meeting with department heads, supervisors, and elected officials that we'll be talking about CDC guidelines, their recommendations, how the rapid tests are going to be used, and show the department heads and stuff how to do that, and actually kind of when to use those, more for the fact if somebody comes up ill within the department that we have the capability of giving them a test. It's not for people just to randomly think that, I'm going to come and get a test just to see if maybe. They really should have an indication that they're not feeling well or that they've been exposed, that we will issue those tests. So we'll be covering those guidelines tomorrow at 10 o'clock down at the Civic Center. Moving on to, I know last week the Tommyknockers came in and did a presentation to us. I am still very apprehensive about where we're moving forward with the Tommyknockers. They currently do have a lease still in place. We will be going through that. I know he came and talked about a corrective action plan. I've been following up with many of the other teams and things that are going on. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed before we would ever recommend that we continue the lease with them. I do want to address that I know that there's been some communication to other things about an exclusive lease with the miners or the muckers and those as well. I would not want to go that route because, as we saw just last week, we had a concert up there. We don't want to do something exclusive for anybody. We did not do that for the Tommyknockers either. So I think, we want to put a lot of thought to what we do as we move forward. So I just kind of address that piece, but I am still working very diligently about what's going on, and the corrective action plan has to be very corrective before we ever even ask anything that's going to be to go forward with that. Moving on, the ARPA committee did meet a couple weeks ago, and we talked about what we're going to do and how we're going to allocate some of the funding going forward. We kind of set a little bit of guidelines of what we're going to do. When ARPA funding first came out, we kind of felt like, we got to really get after this and figure out what we're going to do with the money. But because the guidelines have been so slow in coming out, except for water sewer projects, that we don't want to rush into something just to try to spend this money quickly. So we kind of identified just the amounts of money that we're going to probably allocate, and we're only going to use the first round of money when we first allocate these projects. And the committee talked about putting, we have about $7.8 million in that first round of money. $5.3 million will identify Butte-Silverbow projects that we need to do for just the local government. $1.5 million we're going to put kind of in reserves in case we have a resurgence of COVID that we couldn't predict. We want to make sure that we're protecting our community if we need to allocate some of that funding towards that for unforeseen costs that come along with this resurgence. And then we're going to do a $1 million projects that people can apply, much like they do at SARTA or they do with the Hard Rock monies and things. And we're going to set up guidelines along those same routes where they're going to be reporting. They're going to have to do a lot of this stuff themselves and really vet out the projects that they put forward there. But it'll give the community the ability to apply for funds. I know a lot of people have come forward and asked about money and if they could get help with that. And so this will give them the opportunity to possibly do that. So that's what we're going to do. We're in no rush to get these monies out, and we're looking at probably first round of these. We'll accept projects around November. So we're going to continue to meet with the ARPA committee, and we'll be working on those guidelines and making sure that we have it all set up. So that's just kind of a little snapshot of what we're working on. We don't want to rush into anything thinking, we got to expend these monies, but as I've said all along, we really want to find out what the federal and the state guidelines are going to be and how we can leverage those dollars the best that we possibly can. Also, there's a lot of interest still in Butte-Silverbow. We have all kinds of people that are coming and talking to us, but there aren't any projects that we're going to announce anytime soon. And one of the things that I've always said here is that until we have a shovel in the ground and a project moving forward and we know that it's really happening, we're not going to announce the projects to the public and get people's hopes up until we really know that it's moving forward. But I can tell you there's a lot of energy around our community. There's a lot of people that are looking at investing in our community, and I think there's a bright future coming forward. We just got to get through these tough times with COVID. And with that, I'll close out the Chief Executive's report, and we'll move up on to any public comment on any item that is on the agenda tonight. If you want to speak on anything on the agenda tonight, please come forward, state your name, your address, and what item you'll be speaking on tonight. Do we have any letters? We have a letter to be read in the
One letter.
record.
And it's regarding petition number 2021-02. It was submitted to Michelle Shea as from B. McGregor. As strange as it is that our local government is routinely giving away huge tracts of publicly owned land to certain developers with little to no conditions about the design or other impacts of proposed developments, it is even more disturbing that the closing of streets would be also offered up so casually. The reasons to not close Wyoming Street between Park and Galena are obvious and numerous, and as I am sure will be codified by other comments to City Council. I'll just add that the proposed Praxis development already occupies an entire city block, and that's more than big enough. Please do not approve this street closing. B. McGregor, Butte.
And that's our only letter for tonight. Thank you. Any other public comment on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we are going to move communication number 2021-445 up. We have a special announcement for the council, and so Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I will read the communication. It is communication number 2021-445. Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher requesting the council's concurrence in the appointment of Dylan Pippenich as the planning director for the city county of Butte-Silverbow, Montana.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. First, I think I'd like to just to make a statement. We went through an interview process, and we had we opened it up to people around the nation within our own department, within Butte-Silverbow. And it makes me very proud to say, and I've said it a number of times when we put directors into positions, that we're so fortunate to have the talent within Butte-Silverbow that we have. And we had two very qualified candidates that were internal, that came forward in this job. But Dylan stood out as the most knowledgeable, somebody that had worked within this department, that had the skills, the knowledge, and I believe the real drive to take the planning department to the next level. As you guys all know, we've had a lot of retirements, people leaving this department, so there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead for this department. But with challenges comes, new horizons and opportunity to really do something great within the department. I wish everybody well that is retired there. We had some fantastic people that have retired, put a lot of years into that department. But with that, I will pass it back over for Commissioner Shaw for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to concur with the appointment of Dylan Pippenich as a planning director for the city county of Butte-Silverbow, Montana.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file the appointment of Mr. Pippenich. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay. And I would like to invite Mr. Pippenich up to congratulate him and let him speak just a little bit on his appointment to being the new planning director. A little different scenario rather than having to present for them.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. This is very exciting. I'm as JP said earlier, there's a lot of interest in Butte right now, and I'm excited that I get to be a part of that. And it's a good time to be a part of the planning department and help our community and locally move forward. So I've been very fortunate to work with some very knowledgeable and helpful people for the last 4 years, and I'm excited to be able to put that knowledge to use and keep pushing forward. So thank you.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
All right. And welcome aboard.
Get to work.
Yeah, now get to work. Thank you, Dylan. Moving on to presentations, We have one presentation, communication number 2021-401, Margie Sackham, Action Inc., CEO, requesting council commissioner for their concurrence of a presentation on Wednesday, September 1st, 2021, to provide information about our work to address homelessness in Butte and how funds contributed by Butte-Silverbow support the work. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Margie called me yesterday, and she's in Missoula with her daughter. They're trying to get her settled into college. And she had underestimated how much time it would take, and she was not able to make it this evening. But she did ask me if we could reschedule this, so I looked at our group of other presenters that we have that Commissioner Sorge had asked us to do, and Margie agreed to have it rescheduled to September 22nd. So I would move to take communication 2021-401, hold it in abeyance until September 22nd.
We have a motion and a second to hold in abeyance communication number 2021-401. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Commissioner O'Neill. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote. 11 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to the consent agenda, committee reports A1 through 4 and B1 through, I believe, 17. Oop, I take it back. 1 through 24. Do we have any friendly amendments or segregations? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate item number 16, 2021-436.
Segregate number 16, 2021-436. Any other segregations? Commissioner Rudin.
Chief Executive Gallagher, I'd like to segregate number 8. It's number 2021428. Thank you.
That's communication number 2021-428. Any other segregations? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate communication number 9, number 2021-429.
That's communication number 2021-429.
Yes.
Any other segregations tonight? Seeing none. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would move to approve Section 2 consent agenda, A1 through 4 and B1 through 24, with the exceptions of item 16. I'll start with the in order here. Item 8, communication 2021-428. Item 9, 2021-429. And item 16, 2021-436.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to segregations. Communication number 2021-428, Leslie Clark, Human Resources Director, requesting Council Commissioners concurrence and authorization for Chief Executive to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City and County of Butte-Silver and the Laborers International Union of North America. Commissioner Rudin.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Leslie. The reason I segregated this number 8 was the fact that I, as a new commissioner, and I know a lot of the commissioners on this commission don't realize the amount of time and effort that goes into these contracts. And I think another interesting factor would be is that basically when these negotiations start, is, there's rumors of 1 point this, 1 point that. And I think, in fairness and all that, so everybody on the commission knows is what I see. We have various contracts tonight. I know there's certain things that change in it, but what was the wage increase for the 2-year contract, if you could tell us that, over for the most of the unions?
Thank you, Commissioner Rudin. Director Clark.
Chief Executive Gallagher and Commissioners, the average increase this year for our union contracts going forward is 1.5%, and actually it was the same for next year, although we did have a number of unions accept the 1.5% this year and request wage openers or reopeners for just that article for the second year of the contract, and some for the third year of the contract, because we did have some 3-year contracts this time.
Thank you, Leslie. Follow-up, Commissioner Reardon?
We know what's going on with the union people now. What about the non-union people? Do they receive the same wage increase?
Commissioner Reardon, Director Clark?
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Reardon, yes, 1.5% is what was budgeted for this year for the non-union employees of Butte-Silverbow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right. One more.
Follow-up, Commissioner Reardon?
Once again, Leslie, you know, I've worked with you for quite a while and all that, and like I said, I don't think the people, and Chief Executive Gallagher sits in on most of these negotiations and all that, the work that's put in to make this happen and all that. So at this time, I would like to thank you, and then also make a motion to place 2021-428 and concur and place on file. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file communication number 2021-428. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay. Moving on to communication number 2021-429, Leslie Clark, Human Resources Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence and authorization for Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City and County of Butte-Silverbow and the Butte Police Protective Association. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Appreciate that. Leslie, thank you for basically answering my question. I hope it makes sense. I guess where I'm going with this, the difference in what the detention officers were making last year to the to what it's changed to now, and how it says paid for the actual hours worked. Is that a benefit for them, or that'd be my first question.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Clark.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner O'Neill. It's actually a benefit for both sides. When COVID broke out, they had an extreme shortage of workers there, especially in the jail, to the point where they had to have patrol officers move into the jail, and they had to have detectives move into the patrol jobs. So they were really, really shorthanded. What they found out worked really well for them was asking and the detention officers to work 12-hour shifts instead of 9-hour shifts. It's easier once you're at work, you're more likely to stay at work, and so they had a lot less absenteeism, that sort of thing. Plus, so that was the positive for the county, and it did drop their overtime budget per Sheriff Lester. It was a benefit to the employees as well. They requested that after things calmed down with COVID, if they could remain on the 12-hour shifts, meaning that they would work 12 hours for 3 days and then have 3 days off. They really liked that. It allowed them, again, more time with their families, more time, more personal time outside of a not-so-good environment up there. And so it was kind of a win-win for both parties.
Thank you, Director Clark. Follow-up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Good deal. That's kind of where I was going. Just wanted to make sure the morale of the was good for the jailers. That's kind of where I was going with that. So they sat at the table knowing about this, correct? I mean, it's not a surprise to any of the jailers. This is, they were in part of this negotiation, or they accepted it as well. Is that?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Clark.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner O'Neill. Yes, they did sit at the table. They do have a steward that represents the detention officers during negotiations. One of the hiccups, or I guess maybe the issue that caused this, was the fact that they, based on their new schedule and everything, that they were going to be changed to hourly employees versus period pay employees. And so which they were happy with at that point until they received their first paychecks under the new system. And what happened was is if your pay period that you worked for that particular paycheck, you had some hours that were less than 40 in a week because of the way the schedule was arranged, you had a lower paycheck. And then the next time, you would have a much higher paycheck. So what happened for a lot of them is that it interfered with their budgeting. It interfered with maybe their electronic withdrawals from their paychecks, things like that, when they weren't receiving a consistent payroll check every pay period. So we made the decision, the sheriff, as well as Mark Johnson from the detention center, to allow them to move back to period pay. And upon approval of this MOU, that is our intention.
Thank you, Director Clark. Commissioner O'Neill?
That's it. Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
questions. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to place communication number 2021-429, place on file.
Concur and place on file.
Concur and place on file. Please, thank you.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file communication number 2021-429. Anything on the question? Commissioner Shea?
Super quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Director Clark, with them being period pay, they're still eligible for overtime pay, correct? And is the
Commissioner Shea,
overtime-
Director Clark?
Is the overtime pay over the daily number of hours, or is it by the week? It's just my question.
It'll be based on their 12-hour shift, so any hours that they work beyond the 12-hour shift, so say if they work 13 or 14 hours, those additional hours will be paid as overtime.
Thank you, Director Clark. Okay. Any other questions? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2021-436, Dale and Pippenich, Assistant Planning Director, requesting Council Commissioners for their concurrence to hold a public hearing on September 22nd to hear public comment on zone change application RE Zone -21-000003. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Well, this should have said hold in abeyance, because obviously we're waiting for a public hearing on September 22nd. I'll take full responsibility for that one. So without any further ado, I would like to move to place communication 2021-436 into the Committee of the Whole until September 22nd's public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication number 2021-436 at the Committee of the Whole and hold in abeyance. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Oh, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I did receive some emails, and I think most of us received the same email, where I think it was the planning or the zoning board made a decision to shift this to the Council of Commissioners with the objection of 6 of 7 people in the neighborhood, and I know it's John Sorch's area. So I just wondered if we could get Mr. Pippenich to give us a little bit of an explanation of how this came about. Thank you.
Okay. Director Pippenich.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Fisher, so this is the second public hearing. This would be the second public hearing of a 2 public hearing process. The first one was at Planning Board last week, and they heard testimony for and against this application. What the Planning Department did, so this is an application, and we'll get into it at the public hearing too. It's by Matt Nistler to change some residentially zoned ground to allow for multifamily development. Most of the ground is vacant. He owns a parcel in there, and there's other private property owners that were in there too. So the Planning Department sent certified letters to all the property owners within the area. I believe we sent 15 or more letters. I don't recall right now. We heard back from 7 of them 6 of them opposed it. They own single-family homes in the area. The planning board did approve a motion to recommend approval to the Council of Commissioners. Then you guys hold a public hearing, and then we would discuss it after the public hearing. So that's kind of where we're at in the process.
Thank you, Director Pippenich. Follow-up, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. And Dylan, I just got involved in this today, so I really wasn't aware of what's going on, but why would the planning board, when you had 6 in opposition and 1 in favor, proceed that way? Is there a legal description there, or is there something we're missing? Generally, when you have 6 opposed and 1 in favor of, and the 1 in favor of is one of the property owners, it just seems like that we're missing something as commissioners here. And I read the PDF here and everything, and I still don't understand totally what's going on, but why would they do that? Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, Director Pippenich.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Fisher. Yeah, so the criteria for a zone change application is, it's really whole community based. It wasn't a unanimous vote to recommend approval, but there's 14 criteria that you look at for a zone change, and some of it is based on community need. And there's some things down there that there's some vacant land that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure. There's no water or sewer to it. The thought process there is that allowing multifamily may incentivize some development on some of that vacant land. There's a lot of multifamily that has been allowed by use variance through the Zoning Board of Adjustment that is existing there that would become conforming. And it's basically just a need for increased density in certain areas to help with some housing, affordable housing issues in Butte-Silver. We are basically out of R3 zoned land. That was some of the reasons that the planning board had stated. Commissioner O'Neill was on the planning board, and I will address all that stuff at the public hearing again as well. And my guess is that you will hear from all 6 of those neighbors, if not more, at that public hearing.
Thank you, Director Pippenich. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thanks, Dylan. So in the 14 things that the applicant has to, where am I going? The 14 things that he basically qualified for the change, right? Mm-hmm. The 14 things that the county asks for, if you will, for him to prove that he is capable of changing the zoning, basically he qualifies for. So when the planning board voted for that, right, it comes back down to opinion, right? Now I know I'm not nothing against any of the people that don't want it or do want it, but the applicant is he concurs of what, you know, so he qualifies to move forward as a zone change, if you will. So that's one thing that we have to look at as commissioners. Like, I mean, I know your opinion and the voice of the people definitely means a lot. However, there's always that side too of the decisions made on the planning board that, hey, this guy qualifies. He does own the land. I'm not saying that's the all end of it, but I just wanted to you know, in the discussion, say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Dylan. I understand we will go to public hearing and understand it. I guess I have a little bit of confusion between the variance, you know, and then we allowed them to build the houses east of East Junior High. And then they got to a certain point and they realized they could build no longer houses, so they had to build apartments because the market was changing. So I just don't understand why we went from a variance on one, you know, a few hundred yards, and then we went to a zoning change. I mean, that just seems odd to me that in my years on the commission, that usually takes place all at one time. And I understand both parties, but I hope to follow up this a little bit better, maybe prior to the 22nd. So thank you for your input.
Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Dylan, how much weight does really the neighbors' input have on? Because typically in the past, it's always been, you know, when the neighbors come out, it's you know, the neighbors are the ones that are pretty much living in the neighborhood. So how much weight really do they have on their voice?
Commissioner Sorich, Director Pippenich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Sorich. So let me explain a few things here. For one, I guess it's how much weight does the neighbors have with you? And other than that, so to explain some process a little bit, no matter what the planning board had recommended, it would be a public hearing at the Council of Commissioners because they're a recommendation board. So you folks have the ultimate decision. Number two, the use variances that have been allowed in the past. Use variances have very different criteria for a zone change. One of which is a criteria of hardship, meaning that there has to be a reason that uses permitted in the zone can't be built there. In the past, use variances have been given maybe a little haphazardly is a word I'm going to cautiously use here. The zone change application is the proper way to move forward on these types of applications. That way we're not giving special consideration to one development. We're looking at development as a community as a whole and what the community needs, and that's the criteria that the zone change looks at. So that is the proper avenue going forward, and it actually gives the neighbors more of a voice because there's 2 public hearings. The zoning board has 1. There's 1 week notice. If you're out of town that week, you missed the paper, you don't show up to the zoning board. This is 2 public hearings. They're notified 15 days in advance. Both times they're signed, so it allows for more public input because it's really a community decision whether that zoning should be changed. And Commissioner Soares, just to speak to you, so state law says that if there is a petition against a zone change application signed by more than 25% of the property owners or property owners within 150 feet of the boundary, that the Council of Commissioners can still approve that zone change, but you need a 2/3 vote. So if they, which we have not received a written petition, it has to be a written petition, that's how that would move forward. So their voice does matter.
Thank you, Director Pippenich. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The one thing, too, I want to know, just in this conversation, in this scenario, it was approved at planning board, okay? So that's why it comes to the commissioners, okay? If it wouldn't have been approved at planning, it would have died. Sample of the farm outside the solar farm. So please correct me if I'm right or wrong on that. I'm not trying to, I'm just saying for example of that, okay? Like if we wouldn't have approved it at planning, then we wouldn't be talking about this. Am I correct? Dylan, thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pippenich. Yeah, you shut off your mic. There you go.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner O'Neill, I'm sorry, but that is not correct. The planning board is a recommendation board, so no matter what the final say is with council commissioners. The zoning board, the solar thing that you're referring to, is a quasi-judicial board who appeals go to district court.
Thank you, Director Pippenich.
Sorry.
Commissioner Fisher.
He's proven his chops, aren't you, Dylan?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Dylan Pippenich. It says here that there's an attached staff report. Could you email us or me the staff report on that? It's not attached to the PDF.
Thanks. Commissioner Fisher, Director Pippenich.
Chief Executive Gallagher, I will email all the commissioners the staff report tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Okay, we have a vote.
Could commissioners please vote? And again, this is to move to the committee of hold for the presentation, for the public hearing. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 3, ordinance and resolutions introduced to judiciary. Resolution number 2021-47, resolution vacating, closing, discontinue.
That's just being referred to.
Oh, or just refer this one to judiciary. Yes, that's correct. Okay, moving on to section 4, ordinance and resolutions, emergency suspension of the rules for final passage. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. We have several here, so I'm going to combine them all into one suspension of the rules, if that's all right with County Attorney Joyce. So I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing council resolutions number 2021-35, 2021-36, 2021-37, 2021-38, 2021-39, 2021-40, 2021-41, 2021-42, 2021-43, 2021-44, 2021-45, and 2021-46 by waiving subsection 7 of Rule 36 of the Rules and Order of Business of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having them considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the suspension of the rules to move for final passage. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? And clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay. Moving back to resolution number 2021-35. Clerk, could you please read the resolution?
Resolution number 2021-35, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of Butte Elementary School District Number 1 at a rate established by the Butte School District Number 1, which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for each fund for fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place Council Resolution Number 2021-35 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-36. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-36, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of the Butte County High School District Number 1 at a rate established by Butte School District Number 1, which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Council Resolution 2021-36 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-37. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-37, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the town of Walkerville, state of Montana, at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2021-37 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-38. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-38, a resolution fixing the mandatory tax levies for the various funds of the state of Montana at the rate which will raise the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-38 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-39. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-39. A resolution is to estimating as near as possible the cost of maintenance Special Improvement District number 401 and number 402 for the purpose of the fire hydrant rental within the city and county of Butte-Silver, state of Montana for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2021-39 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-40. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-40, a resolution levying special assessments to paying the cost of lighting within the special improvement districts enumerated by this resolution within the city, county of Butte-Silver, state of Montana, and for the fiscal year 2022, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-40 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-41. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-41, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of Ramsey Elementary School District Number 3 at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-41 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-42. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-42, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of the Divide Elementary School District Number 4 at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-42 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-43. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-43, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of the joint high school and the joint elementary districts number 1 through 4 at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-43 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-44. Clerk, please read the resolution.
A resolution fixing the mandatory tax levy for the various county-wide funds of the school districts within the city, county of Butte-Silver at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by the tax levy and for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-44 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-45. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-45, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of the Melrose Elementary School District Number 5 at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by tax levy for each fund for the fiscal year 2022 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2021-45 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2021-46. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2021-46, a resolution fixing the rate of the assessment to finance the cost of a single street maintenance district within the city county of Butte-Silver, state of Montana for the fiscal year 2021-2022 and for providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution number 2021-46 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to any public comment on items not addressed on the agenda tonight. If you'd like to comment on anything not on the agenda tonight, please step forward, state your name and address, and what you'd be talking to us about tonight. No letters? Seeing none? Okay. I want to refer to the calendar and meetings and events. Please refer to that, see everything that's coming up, and I will take a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you. I just want to let everyone know here at the council meeting that I am working on putting together a walkthrough of the Wyoming Street section that is being asked for in a petition. I thought it might be nice to have us look at everything there, just actually go through it and have our questions answered, and Bill Markovich will be letting us do that. He was gracious enough to do that. I will put this in an email, but with the holiday coming up, it would be Tuesday at 5:30. This is the day after Labor Day. And we would probably meet down by the old Greek Cafe open lot, but I just thought it'd make a good opportunity for all of us to be able to do that. So we don't have to worry about a quorum. It's information only, and it'll give us an opportunity to ask questions. So I will put that in an email, but putting a bug in your ear. So
So that'd be Tuesday, September 7th at
Yes,
5:30
5:30
p.m. Commissioner Fisher, did you have some?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'd like to apologize to Mr. Pippenich. I do have a staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. I'll take them. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would also like to invite all of the commissioners. The Economic Development Committee has organized an informational tour at Montana Connections Park tomorrow, and it is also open to the public if any of the public would like to attend. We will be meeting at the Port of Montana building at 5:30 for about a 1-hour tour.
Okay.
I will also send an email.
So tomorrow night at 5:30 out at the Port of Montana admin building, that's where we'll meet at. So anyone that'd like to go on the tour. Thank you, Commissioner Shea. Any other comments before we take a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Have a great night.